It was on an April morning that my life changed. One of those mornings where the sky seems bluer than usual, where the breeze carries the scent of damp earth and the whisper of leaves dancing on branches. I was driving down Willow Creek Road, heading toward Whispering Pines Farm, when something pulled my gaze to the roadside. A horse, alone. He stood motionless, head lowered. I slowed down, intrigued by this unexpected presence. As I approached, he slowly raised his gaze and our eyes met. There was a depth in that look, a silence, something that went beyond words. His coat was dirty, dull, his frame thin, but that wasn't what made me stop. It was his eyes, a silent plea, a quiet ache that seemed to whisper, "Please, see me." I pulled over to the shoulder. For just a few seconds, our gazes locked and something shifted inside me. A quiet discomfort took hold of my chest. I thought about getting out of the car, checking on him. Maybe he had an owner nearby. Maybe he was just resting. I glanced at my watch. I was late for an important meeting. With a heavy sigh, I started the engine again and continued on my way. But even when I was far away, the silence inside the car said something else. The image of those eyes remained etched in my mind. Deep down, I already knew. The meeting at the farm went by in a blur. We discussed business, contracts, numbers, empty words that dissipated as soon as we spoke them. All I could see were those eyes. During the breakfast offered by our hosts, nothing felt right. The clinking of cutlery, the low murmur of conversations, everything seemed distant. And one question hovered in my mind, still unexpressed. What if that had been his last chance? I went home early, saying I wasn't feeling well. It wasn't a lie. Something inside me hurt in an almost physical way. The house seemed incomplete, as if I had left something behind. I sat in the living room armchair trying to focus on the news, but it was useless. My wife, Sarah, noticed my restlessness. "What happened?" she asked, sitting beside me. I told her about the horse, about how he was alone, visibly mistreated, and how I had simply driven past. As I spoke, my voice became choked, and I realized there were tears in my eyes. Sarah looked at me intently. Words weren't necessary. She jumped up. "We have to go back, now." Within 15 minutes we were ready. We grabbed apples, fresh water, and Sarah called Jack, a friend who worked with animal rescues. As we hurriedly prepared, there was a quiet fear. What if he was gone? What if we were too late? We drove the same route, hearts tight, and there he was, in the same spot, alone, waiting, as if he knew we would return. The afternoon sun was already beginning to tilt toward the horizon when we parked at the same spot where I had stopped earlier. My heart was racing, as if I were about to meet an old friend. Sarah held my hand tightly, conveying a courage I wasn't sure I possessed. We got out of the car slowly. When the horse saw us, he took a small step forward, just one, but that simple movement broke something inside me. It was as if he had been waiting, as if he had saved his last bit of hope for us. We approached cautiously, speaking in soft tones. We offered water in a bowl we had brought, and Sarah extended an apple in her open hand. He accepted, hesitant at first. His eyes had changed, they were less tired. There was a glimmer there, a small spark of hope. "He doesn't have any markings or identification," Sarah observed, examining him carefully without touching him. The horse was a beautiful animal despite his poor condition, a medium-sized stallion, probably a quarter horse with a reddish-brown coat that should have been shiny when well cared for, but now it was dull, with patches of dirt and some areas without hair, revealing irritated skin. Jack arrived about half an hour later with a horse trailer, but when the animal saw the trailer, he hesitated. He took a step back, unsure. We didn't say anything. We just waited. And then, in a moment that felt like a breath held too long, he walked forward. One step, then another. Quietly, he climbed the ramp himself. As if he knew, this time, he wasn't being taken to suffering, but to something new. "It's like he understands we're here to help," whispered Jack, carefully closing the trailer door. "They always sense it." We headed to Heartland Rural Veterinary Clinic, about 40 minutes away. During the entire journey, I kept thinking about what would have happened if we had ignored that impulse to go back. Would the horse have survived? Would someone else have found him? Or would he simply have disappeared, another life forgotten by the roadside? At the clinic, Dr. Emily, a middle-aged veterinarian with gentle eyes and experienced hands, examined the animal carefully. The diagnosis? Dehydration, signs of neglect, a skin infection. But overall, he was strong. What impressed everyone most was his gentleness. He allowed them to care for him, met their eyes, and seemed to say thank you. "He's a survivor," said Dr. Emily as she applied medication. "He must have been abandoned for at least a few weeks, judging by the condition of his coat and the weight loss. But he's young, probably between 5 and 7 years old. With proper care, he'll recover completely." While the team worked, Sarah and I remained there as if our presence could somehow provide reassurance to the animal. It was then that Sarah turned to me, with tears in her eyes, but a smile on her face. "What should we call him?" The question caught me by surprise. We hadn't discussed keeping him, but somehow it felt right. "Halo," I replied without hesitation. "Let's call him Halo." "Halo," repeated Sarah, testing the name. "Because even in his fragility, he radiates something special." And without meaning to, that horse had illuminated a part of us that had been dark for a long time. In the days that followed, we visited Halo every morning. Dr. Emily had recommended that he stay at the clinic for at least 2 weeks, until the skin infection completely disappeared and he gained enough weight. Each visit was like discovering a new layer of that extraordinary being who had entered our lives in such an unexpected way. At first, he barely moved. He stayed in a corner of the stall, observing the world with those deep eyes that had captured me on the road. But then something changed. First it was his eyes, then a soft whinny, and finally firm steps inside the enclosure. I remember the day he saw us and ran to the fence. He whinnied loudly. There was life in that sound. He was becoming himself again. During these visits, Sarah and I began researching horse care. Neither of us had experience with equines. I grew up in a city apartment, and Sarah, although she had spent summers on her grandparents' farm, had never cared for horses. We bought books, watched videos, talked with Jack and Dr. Emily. Gradually, we prepared to welcome Halo to our small property on the outskirts of town. A 5-acre plot we had purchased 5 years ago, with the vague dream of someday putting down deeper roots in the land. Sarah had a natural talent with Halo. She spent hours just sitting near him, sometimes reading aloud, other times in silence. The horse seemed to appreciate her presence, approaching gradually, allowing gentle touches on his neck. "He trusts you," commented Dr. Emily during one of our visits. "I don't understand why," Sarah replied. "After what he must have gone through with humans, animals live in the present," explained the veterinarian. "They don't hold grudges like we do. They perceive intention, the energy we bring, and you two bring peace to him." Those words touched something deep inside me, living in the present, not holding grudges. I, who spent so much time trapped between regrets of the past and anxieties about the future, was receiving a lesson from a being who had known abandonment, but was still willing to trust again. Halo's coat began to shine. His movements became light. He playfully pushed the water bucket, pressed his muzzle into the arms of the staff, as if to say, "Thank you for not giving up on me." At home, Sarah and I worked on building suitable shelter for Halo. We hired experienced people to fence part of the property and build a simple but comfortable stable. We planted appropriate grass for pasture in an area that was previously just overgrown weeds. Each weekend was dedicated to preparing everything for his arrival. Our friends noticed the change in us. We were more animated, more connected to each other and to the world around us. Halo's rescue had taken us out of a work-homework routine that, without us realizing it, had left us apathetic. One of those mornings, while brushing Halo, he already allowed this contact, I found myself thinking about how a casual encounter can completely change the course of a life. If I had chosen another route that morning, if I had ignored that impulse to go back, would my life continue exactly as before? How different would it be now? And I realized that sometimes it's the small decisions, seemingly insignificant, that have the power to transform everything. Sometimes, during those quiet moments between brushstrokes and treats, Sarah and I would ask ourselves, who rescued whom? On the 30th day, Dr. Emily gave us the words we had been waiting for. Halo was ready to go home. We had prepared a place for him on our property, which we now affectionately called Little Haven. A simple stable, tall shady trees, green pasture, a place of peace. The morning of the transfer arrived with a glorious sun, as if the sky itself wanted to celebrate. Jack showed up with the trailer, and to our surprise, Halo entered without hesitation. The fear he had shown the first time had disappeared. Now there was confidence in his steps. "He knows he's going home," said Jack as he closed the trailer door. "They always know." The journey back to our property was filled with anticipation. Sarah held my hand, squeezing it occasionally without saying a word. It wasn't necessary. We shared the same feeling of joy mixed with responsibility. When we arrived, Halo stepped down from the trailer with joy. He sniffed the soil, circled the field, then stood in the middle, scanning the space as if to say, "I'm home." We sat in the grass nearby, watching the late afternoon sun touch his now gleaming coat. He lay down softly and let out a long, steady breath. We didn't speak, but in that moment we knew. That sound was gratitude, and something else too. It was the sound of our transformation. In the days that followed, we established a routine. We woke up early, fed Halo, cleaned his stable, and spent some time just watching him explore his new territory. He seemed especially to enjoy a small stream that cut through the property, where we often found him with his hooves in the water, looking contemplatively at the current. Gradually, we began to introduce light equipment, a soft halter, a special brush, a blanket. Each new item was presented with patience, respecting Halo's time to get used to it. We weren't in a hurry. Our goal wasn't to tame Halo or make him work. We just wanted him to be happy and healthy. One afternoon, while Sarah was reading a book sitting under a tree, Halo slowly approached and lay down beside her, like a giant dog seeking company. She continued reading, now aloud, while gently stroking his neck. It was such a serene image that I treasured it in memory like a treasure. "I think he likes stories," Sarah commented later. "Did you see how attentive he was when I was reading?" "Maybe we should tell him the story of how we met," I suggested. And that's what we did that night. Sitting in the stable with the soft light of a lantern, we narrated to Halo how we had found him on the road, how we had almost continued on, but something made us turn back. He listened to us with that tranquil attention that seemed to be his trademark. "You changed our lives, you know," whispered Sarah, caressing his muzzle. "Before you, we were just existing." It was true. Our life had become a sequence of identical days, without great joys or sorrows, just the monotonous comfort of routine. We had good jobs, a comfortable home, occasional friends, but something was missing. A deeper connection with the world around us, a purpose beyond the accumulation of material goods and professional status. Halo had brought us back to the present. His care required full attention. We couldn't be physically present but mentally absent, as so often happened in our interactions with people. He forced us to slow down, to observe the small changes, the way his coat shone more each day, how his gaze became more confident, how he explored new corners of the property with growing curiosity. And in this process of caring for Halo, we were, without realizing it, learning to take better care of ourselves and each other. With Halo's arrival in our life, our small world began to expand in unexpected ways. Neighbors we barely knew appeared, curious about the horse. Children from the area asked permission to visit him, bringing carrots and apples as gifts. Sarah, who always had an artistic side dormant because of her corporate career, began photographing Halo at different times of the day. Soon an entire wall of our living room was covered with images of the horse, running at dawn with mist around him, contemplating the sunset, lying quietly under the shade of a tree. "You should exhibit these photos," I suggested one day, as we admired the growing collection. "They capture something special." Sarah seemed surprised by the suggestion, but the idea planted a seed. In the weeks that followed, she began studying photography more seriously, buying books and watching online tutorials. Her camera, previously rarely used, became an extension of her hands. I was changing too. My work as an accountant, which previously seemed the center of my existence, began to occupy a smaller place in my life. Not that I neglected it. On the contrary, I became more efficient to be able to return home earlier. But the identity I had built around my profession, the pride I felt in being the successful accountant, began to give way to something simpler and more authentic. One Saturday morning, while we were cleaning Halo's stable, I had an idea. What if we opened this place for visits? Not as a business, but as a way to share what Halo has taught us. Sarah stopped what she was doing, thoughtful. Like a kind of sanctuary? A place where people can come, slow down, connect with nature and animals? Exactly, I replied, excited about the possibility. We could start small, maybe with local schools. The children would love it. The idea grew quickly. In a few weeks, we had transformed a corner of our property into a small reception area, with rustic benches under the trees and a table with information about horses and other farm animals. Our first official visit was from a third-grade class from the local elementary school. 28-year-old children with wide eyes and endless questions surrounded Halo with a mixture of reverence and excitement. To our surprise, he remained calm, allowing each child to touch him gently under our supervision. "He likes children," observed the teacher, Mrs. Reed, as she watched the interaction. "It's rare to see such a patient horse." "He seems to understand their children," replied Sarah. "Look how he lowers his head for them." As word spread, more schools got in touch. Soon, we were receiving visits regularly, not just from children, but also from groups of elderly people, individuals with special needs, and even stressed executives seeking a break from urban hustle. Jack, our friend who had helped rescue Halo, was impressed with the transformation of our property. "You've created something special here," he said during a visit, "and to think it all started with an abandoned horse on the road." It was during one of these conversations with Jack that the idea of expanding our small initiative arose. He knew other rescued animals that needed a home, an elderly goat from a farmer who had passed away, a pair of ducks from a flooded property, a donkey with a lame leg that could no longer work. "You have enough space," argued Jack. "And you're already receiving visits regularly. Why not transform this into a real sanctuary for rescued animals?" The idea was scary and exciting at the same time. It would mean a radical change in our lives. More responsibilities, more expenses, less time for ourselves. But when we looked at Halo, at the transformation he had provoked, not only in our lives, but now in the lives of so many other people who visited him, the decision seemed clear. One night, sitting on the porch step, watching Halo grazing peacefully under the moonlight, we made our decision. "Let's do it," said Sarah, squeezing my hand. "Let's create a sanctuary." And so, almost 6 months after we had found Halo on the road, our little haven was transforming into something bigger than we had ever imagined. The transformation of our property into a sanctuary for rescued animals didn't happen overnight, nor was it without challenges. At first, we kept our jobs, dedicating evenings and weekends to the project. Sarah reduced her work schedule to part-time, while I continued full-time, but with more flexible hours. The first new resident after Halo was Bella, the elderly goat Jack had mentioned, a Nubian with black and white hair, golden eyes, and majestic horns that curved backward. Her former owner, an 87-year-old gentleman, had passed away, and the family didn't know what to do with her. "They were going to take her to slaughter," explained Jack when he brought her. "She's at least 10 years old, but she can live another 5 or 6 with proper care." Bella had a strong temperament, and in the first days, kept away from everyone, including Halo. She found a corner of the pasture where she spent most of her time, watching suspiciously. We respected her space, offering food and water without forcing interactions. It was Sarah who finally won Bella's trust. With infinite patience, she sat near her every day, offering fresh leaves of her favorite vegetable, we discovered it was kale, and speaking in a soft tone. On the 10th day, Bella approached close enough to eat directly from her hand. On the 15th, she allowed Sarah to touch her coat. "It's like a healing process," commented Sarah one night after having spent hours with Bella. "Each animal that arrives here brings invisible scars. Our job is to offer a safe space for those scars to heal." Soon after came Waddle and Daisy, the pair of ducks that had lost their home in a flood. Unlike Bella, they adapted quickly, discovering the stream and transforming it into their personal domain. Their contagious joy when swimming and splashing in the water brought a smile to everyone who observed them. And then came Toby, the donkey with the lame leg. His story was particularly sad. He had spent years working in difficult conditions until an injury to his right hind leg made him useless in the eyes of his owner. Jack found him tied to a tree, without food or water, apparently abandoned to his fate. Toby represented our biggest challenge so far. Besides the medical care for his leg, which would never fully recover but could improve with proper treatment, we needed to deal with his deep distrust of humans. He would shrink back when someone approached too quickly, and the sound of loud male voices clearly frightened him. It was Halo, surprisingly, who helped Toby adapt. The two formed an unlikely friendship. We often found them side by side in the pasture, as if Halo was protecting his smaller friend. And gradually, seeing how Halo interacted comfortably with us, Toby began to lower his defenses. Expenses increased as we welcomed more animals. Feed, veterinary care, improvements to the facilities, All of this consumed our savings more quickly than we had anticipated. Sarah and I had several tense conversations about finances, trying to balance our desire to help with the practical reality of our limited resources. It was during one of these difficult moments that Mrs. Reed, the teacher who had brought the first class to visit Halo, made a suggestion that would change everything. Have you thought about officially registering as a non-profit organization? You could receive donations, apply for grants, maybe even get regular volunteers. The idea had never occurred to us. Our sanctuary had grown organically, without a business plan or formal structure. But it made sense. With official non-profit status, we could expand our reach and ensure the long-term sustainability of the project. The following weeks were a whirlwind of paperwork, meetings with lawyers and accountants, and long conversations about the direction we wanted to follow. We decided to call our organization Second Glance, a reference to the fact that all our animals had received a second chance, a new look at their lives. The process was exhausting, but when we finally received official approval, we felt a mixture of relief and renewed enthusiasm. We created a simple website with Sarah's photographs and stories of each of the animals. To our surprise, the response was immediate. Donations began to arrive, some small, from ordinary people touched by the stories, others more substantial, from local businesses seeking ways to demonstrate social responsibility. One day, about a year after we had found Halo, I received a call at the office. It was Sarah, her voice trembling with excitement. "You won't believe it. The Animal Life Foundation approved our proposal. They're going to fund the construction of a new stable and a basic veterinary clinic on the property." That night, we celebrated with a bottle of wine on the porch, watching our rescued animals grazing peacefully at sunset. Halo, now strong and majestic, occasionally trotted across the field, as if showing off his complete recovery. Bella rested in the shade of a tree, chewing tranquilly. Waddle and Daisy swam in the stream, while Toby observed everything from his favorite spot near the fence. "Did you imagine that day on the road would bring us here?" asked Sarah, leaning back on my shoulder. "Not in my wildest dreams," I replied, kissing the top of her head, "but I can't imagine our life any other way now." With the new funding and official non-profit status, our small sanctuary began to transform into something much larger than we had imagined. We hired 2 part-time employees, Nathan, a veterinary student, to help with the daily care of the animals, and Mia, a social media specialist, to manage our online presence and coordinate visits and volunteers. The new stable was built in record time, a spacious and well-ventilated structure that could accommodate up to 10 horses. The small veterinary clinic, although basic, was equipped for simple procedures and preventive care, reducing our dependence on external visits for every minor problem. As our reputation grew, we received more and more requests to take in animals. One morning, Jack showed up with an unexpected surprise, a pregnant mare that had been found wandering near a highway. "She should give birth in about a month," he explained, as we watched the beautiful cream-colored mare adjust to her new environment. "I thought of you immediately." We decided to call her Star because of the small star-shaped white mark on her forehead. Her pregnancy added a new level of anxiety and expectation to our sanctuary. Dr. Emily, who now came regularly as a volunteer, helped us prepare everything for the birth. "It will be an amazing experience for the children who visit," she commented during a routine examination. "How many city children have the opportunity to witness the birth of a foal?" And she was right. When the time came, we were fortunate that it happened on a Saturday morning, when a group of children from a local community center was visiting. The birth was quick and without complications, a beautiful chestnut foal with white socks on all 4 legs. "Hope," said one of the little girls, her eyes wide with wonder. "You should call her Hope." And so we did. Hope became our symbol, a tangible representation of the new beginning that each animal in our sanctuary had received. With each passing month, our little haven grew, not just in number of animals but in impact. We began partnerships with local schools for educational programs, with nursing homes for therapeutic visits, and with companies for team-building days centered around animal care. One ordinary Tuesday, a reporter from the local newspaper showed up unannounced. She had heard about our sanctuary and wanted to do a feature story. The article, when published, brought even more attention, including from a local TV station that came to film a segment about our work. The exposure brought both blessings and challenges, more people wanting to visit, more offers to volunteer, more donations, but also more animals needing rescue, more pressure to expand, more expectations to meet. As our little sanctuary gained recognition, I sometimes found myself reflecting on the road that had brought us there. A road that began with a chance encounter on a country lane and a decision to turn back. How thin the line is between continuing on our planned path and taking an unexpected turn that changes everything. 3 years. It had been 3 years since that April morning when Halo entered our lives. Our sanctuary, second glance, now housed 23 rescued animals, from horses and donkeys to goats, ducks, chickens, and even a miniature pig named Wilbur, who had escaped from a truck headed to slaughter. Sarah had left her corporate job entirely, dedicating herself full-time to the sanctuary and her photography, which now included a popular book titled Second Chances, featuring the stories and images of our rescued animals. I had reduced my work schedule to 3 days a week, finding a balance that allowed me to contribute both to our livelihood and to the sanctuary. Our modest 5 acres had expanded to 15, thanks to a neighbor who, impressed by our work, sold us his adjacent property at a significantly reduced price. The additional space allowed for more pasture, a visitor center, and a dedicated area for educational programs. But the true measure of our growth wasn't in acres or buildings, or even the number of animals rescued. It was in the ripple effect we witnessed every day. The child who decided to become a veterinarian after visiting us, the elderly man who found purpose in volunteering after retirement, the family that adopted a rescue dog after learning about animal abandonment from our presentations. On a perfect autumn day, as golden leaves drifted down around us, we held a special celebration for Halo's estimated birthday. He was now a magnificent animal, strong and confident, with a gleaming coat and bright eyes that showed no trace of the fear and exhaustion I had first seen on that roadside. As our community of supporters gathered around, sharing cake and stories, I found myself standing slightly apart, watching Halo interact with the children. He was remarkably gentle, seeming to understand intuitively which children needed extra patience or reassurance. Sarah joined me, slipping her hand into mine. "What are you thinking?" she asked softly. "About how often we pass by someone or something that needs help and think, 'That's not my place,'" I replied. "But what if it is? What if that moment is your one chance to do something that truly matters?" She nodded, her eyes following Halo as he accepted a carrot from a little girl in a wheelchair. Sometimes, all someone needs is for you to come back, to not ignore the silence, to choose to stay. Halo didn't just save himself, I mused. He saved us too. He reconnected us with something pure, something vital. He reminded us that compassion doesn't come with a schedule, but it has the power to change everything. Later that evening, after everyone had gone and twilight settled softly over our sanctuary, Sarah and I sat on our porch swing, watching Halo running freely across the field, his mane flowing in the gentle breeze. We felt it deep in our chests. Yes, we hesitated. Yes, we almost kept driving. But we turned back. And in turning back, we didn't just find a lost horse, we found ourselves. My friends, we've come to the end of the story. Did you like it? What lesson can you bring to life from this story? Leave it here in the comments. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and watch this video that's playing on your screen. This story will impact you. See you next time.